Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first official Aurora Squadron podcast. My name is William, and I'm joined here today with Derek as well as Brant. Say hello, guys.
Hello, I'm Derek.
Hey, I'm Brant.
So, the purpose of this podcast is to talk about the local meta of Alaska X-Wing scene. I believe that it's pretty important because, we've got a little bit of a smaller community up here, and it's a little different than what people fly either in the lower 48 or across the world, which usually tends to stick to more meta type lists. We kind of just fly what we like up here, and so hopefully you guys find it interesting to hear about what the scene is like here. Of course, we'll also talk about our thoughts on how the meta in general is doing in X-Wing, as well as some other interesting talking points along the way that might change from podcast to podcast.
Okay. So we should probably kick it off by talking about some of our most successful lists up here in Alaska.
So we have a few of our most recent tournaments. First, we'll go over one of the smaller tournaments, which is from a local shop. And this was a 4-player tournament, which might give you a little bit of an idea to just how many people the scene sometimes attracts. Not everyone is a big success.
So we'll start off with a tournament from our Tier 1 Gaming.
This was in a couple months ago, about when one of the more interesting, ship combinations, and I guess it was sort of controversial at the time, the Kova Nell Leia crew combination for the Resistance. This took first place in this particular tournament, along with Poe Dameron and Talazan, which are both pretty standard picks for power players in that faction. What do you guys think about this list?
I personally think that Kova Leia is pretty much one of the best values the Resistance have right now, considering that they don't have a ship that fits into the knife fighter archetype.
Yeah, it's definitely a pretty interesting and nifty combo. The thing that really catches me here with this list is actually the Taliesin having marksmanship, lone wolf, and prockets, because you don't see a lot of RZ2s going out of their way to be alone, especially with a lot of their synergy with the rest of the ships in the Resistance.
Yeah, that one definitely can pack quite a huge punch if it gets in close, which it has the maneuverability to do so.
It is an A-Wing.
Yeah. Some of the other notable lists in this particular tournament included a First Order list, which took second. It had a Quick Draw that had Special Forces Gunner, which I think is pretty interesting.
No, that's pretty standard. That's her gunner.
Oh, fuck, you're right.
And then, let's keep just a naked Kylo and a naked Taliesin, which actually surprised me because I'm pretty sure you can fit more onto that Kylo, kind of give him a bit of an edge.
You're probably correct, but the player who plays this list has been playing pretty much it exclusively for the majority of FO's official release.
That's pretty true.
So he very much knows what he's doing with that.
Yeah. He's a fellow FO player, and I definitely think this list is very strong. I still think that putting something on Kylo would help it.
I think this was the same list he flew at the hyperspace trial.
We'll get to that here in a few.
Mm-hmm. So the next list that we have here is another local store-based tournament. This is at Bosco's, which generally gets more people, at least as of recently. This particular tournament was an 8-player tournament, which is pretty standard for the number of players up here in Alaska. So, for first place in this particular tournament, it was, one of the more popular meta lists, even across the world, which is 2 Jedis, as well as Rick Oli.
It's efficient. It's efficient. You have all the force in the world, and Olay is a solid bit of points.
Yeah, this is definitely a list where 3 out of 3 ships are difficult to pin down.
Gosh, isn't it ever?
Oh my god, it's especially Anakin with his repositioning tools, with with his ability being able to just shed that stress, so he can just keep on the go. It really takes a good pilot against him to deal with him, or just a swarm.
If you can force them to spend all their force points before the first turn, then that greatly hampers their ability to actually do things. Surprisingly.
I will say that one of the interesting differences on this list particularly is that one of the Jedis, Obi-Wan, has calibrated laser targeting. Normally when you see 2 Jedis and Rick Ollie, it's both of the Jedis are Delta 7B. But I think that Obi and Anakin together just take up so much points on their own that he decided that he'd go with calibrated laser as well as a few extra upgrades, or I think in this case, an even bigger bid.
Well, it definitely pays off with the higher initiative Delta. No, I guess not Deltas, Jedi Starfighters, not Delta Bs. But if you can actually land that bullseye, then it's just as powerful offensively.
For sure.
A couple other interesting lists here, specifically the 3rd place list, actually, because running an RZ1, you don't see a lot of those, even throughout Extended, especially.
Yeah, you only ever... I guess you do see Jake fairly commonly with Rebel Beef lists, but the other than that, RZ1 is pretty well in the dump.
Yeah, I think I speak for everyone where we really can't wait for Tycho to come out in one of these pilot packs in the near future.
Oh no, I think I can wait a little bit longer.
But what's the PS5 RZ1 ever done to you?
I don't want to remember 1.0.
It only goes up to PS4 right now, doesn't it?
Correct.
That's just disappointing for the type of ship that it is. I really do hope that they get some love in the future.
Unfortunate that they are not getting something, but we're going to see another M3A pilot in these card packs.
They need more variety.
Right. Yeah, there's already, a dozen of them. Of course they need more, right? That's exactly what they need, not actual buffs.
Another note I want to point out here about this tournament is, I believe, 3 of these lists, not 4, sorry, 3 of these 8 lists are First Order. First Order actually has quite a presence up here.
Yeah, we do have a lot of people that are here that are just super into the faction, and so you will see more First Order people up here than other tournaments. I do realize that they have some pretty good strength. It's like Tabson specifically and Kylo, but they're just not seeing the representation, worldwide.
It probably has a lot to do with the lack of strength and anything other than those like 3 or 4 ships. They have Blackout, but Blackout's probably too expensive, and his ability is nothing more than an advanced zoning tool. Just forces your opponents to play a little bit differently.
Which you can work to your advantage. I think, though, if you're running the Blackout, you definitely need to build a bit more around forcing your opponents to position differently, so they almost making them choose between a kill box you set up or taking probably a trick shot from Blackout, where that's not exactly what you want to be dealing with.
Yeah.
I do like Blackout a lot. If we're talking about it right now, I think that he really adds something interesting to the game. He's got a game plan. You really want to work towards that. And your opponent also knows that game plan. It's not like Quick Draw. Not to poke anyone's bubble, but Quick Draw is something that as a design isn't as interactive.
It's very very straightforward as to what she wants to do.
Mm-hmm. Although I will say that, and this has happened on stream before.
5 forward around the world.
The 5 forward, that, I still remember that. And we had something like that happen locally too. I think you were the one. It happened to you.
Yep. Went over the rock, and I think it was Fen Rao. I took him out in one shot. So.
Oh, wasn't it? No, it was Empire. Was it Empire? Soontir.
Oh yeah, a Soontir
from full health.
From full health, and I was not a very happy opponent. I could not joke around anymore.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, next tournament we'll go to one of the largest hyperspace trials that we have.
Well, we only have 2.
True.
Hyperspace trials.
Yeah,
This is the one at Battle Zone Ursa, as we call it. Alaska and their bears. To kind of give you guys an idea, this is our second largest tournament this year, and it had 13 people.
We have had more people in the past, but
several have left for school or just, work conflicted. It's really difficult for people up here to get time off with the daylight hours, actually. I've been told by Cody specifically. He says just the way his hours work. Can't do it.
Anyways, Battle Zone Urza, just to give a little background, this is one of the largest tabletop wargaming events that is held in Alaska. There's Warhammer, there's painting competitions, we have plenty of other tabletop games that are there.
I think there was a Star Trek going on next to us, actually.
Really? Attack Wing?
Yeah, I think Attack Wing was going on. It was slightly to the left and behind us, but
I didn't see it.
I wondered what that was.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Attack Wing, because I'm pretty sure I saw a couple Enterprises.
Oh, it wasn't just people proxying stuff?
No, it wasn't, which was surprising.
I have seen that a couple of times. Anyways, so interesting enough, the first place taken in this was, again, First Order, and I think partially that's due to just the player that is behind this particular list.
I think I've seen him fly not First Order a grand total of 2 times since 2.0 came out, and one of those was the day after, or not the day after, the next time we met up. He definitely loves his First Order, and that's the exact same Quick Draw Kylo Tafson list.
So this has been the list he's been flying for a long time now.
Right. Not only is this something that he has a lot of practice with, but he's also one of the best X-Wing players in Alaska. I could probably say at least.
I mean, he won the hyperspace trial, so that's at least true.
He's definitely, I'd say, top 3 at minimum.
Mm-hmm. I'll say this particular tournament also had quite a few number of
swarm lists.
Wonky lists, and yes, there were quite a few swarm lists.
Yep,
definitely a good amount of those Mega Squadron swarms.
Yep,
I know there was 2 of them, which I will say you don't often see copies of specific lists at the same tournament. It's very rare here.
That's just how you know that it's pretty darn good.
And I think this is, speaking for myself, this is the first time I've seen the Omega Squadron swarm, with Fanatical and Advanced Optics.
Yeah.
And it's the only time was at this particular tournament. And then there was 2 of them.
Yeah, that's definitely something that was being flown a little bit before you started to be able to come to our Monday nights.
Mm-hmm.
Cody, I'll bring up Cody again. He was flying it for a while, and he had a great time until he went against Isaac, who brought a TIE swarm.
Sloan swarm, yeah.
Yeah, really interesting is this Empire list here, though. Running an interceptor that's not Soontir.
Turfinier?
Yep.
Yeah, you don't really see him.
Yep, his initiative just does not match what his ability wants to do.
What is his initiative? 4?
Yeah.
4?
He's initiative 4, and when he shoots you, he gets a barrel or boost, even with even more stressed.
That is unfortunate.
Yep, you got to run swarm tactics. I feel like almost, but he made it almost work. Almost made it into the cut. One off. Another wonky list that I think honestly took everyone by surprise. I don't think anyone saw this coming because he'd kind of been prepping it in secret. Was our second place with 7 Z95s.
All of them with Dead Man Switch, and 6 of them with Electronic Baffle, and 1 upgraded to have Intimidation.
Yep, that PS3 with Intimidation, and then just 6 PS1s. Jam those down the throat. I think to get into the finals, actually, he was facing the standard Jedi list, Obi and Annie, won it by baffling his Z95 to kill Anakin.
Correct.
So that is
The second I had done 1 damage with my Z, yeah, he immediately seceded because he was only 1 health off.
As you probably would have guessed, Derek is the one that flown that list. How was flying that list? This isn't really something that you've done before. This isn't something that we've seen too much around.
I love flying that list. The only downside to the list for me is I don't know enough Z95s naturally to fly more often.
That's true.
If I can get 2 more Z95s, then I'll be set, and I'll just probably win that list exclusively in tournaments.
Although you have mentioned before that it's sort of like it's a fully optimized list. Like there's very little that you can change about it without just overhauling it.
Yep.
Correct. The main downside is that any points change to any of my upgrades completely removes the list from existence.
Yep.
Yeah, if any of them gets nerfed.
Yeah, which I should be safe. I don't think Dead Man Switch, Baffle, or the PS1Zs are any spot to be changed.
Although I will say, you do have the PS3 there that you can bring down to a PS1 if there is some sort of change. So there's some buffer room.
That gives me a 1 or 2 point wiggle room based on what they do.
But yeah, not too much you can add because essentially that upgrade is because you had a bunch of points left over with that 7, but just not enough for another ship or another upgrade on all of them.
Yeah, I could have made it a PS1 with an ion missile, which might have been more efficient, but it's hard to say for sure. I did use the Intimidates 3 times in the tournaments, and it was effective all times I used it, so it's hard to say whether an ion missile would have been more efficient or not.
Well, I mean, it's kind of hard to argue with second place. I mean, sure, you could have gotten first, but I think second place is nothing to sneeze at.
It's my highest tournament placing so far, so I'll take it.
We also had a rack list with 4 separate TIE fighters.
Yeah, you normally see Vader as the one who has the TIE Fighter squadron.
I mean, Vader was there, but he just wasn't, piloting. He was with that rack.
Actually, I played that list. I played that list twice, I believe.
Didn't he choose to blow his own ships up?
Correct. I gave him the only shots I gave him were on 3 low health Z's that were stuck in his TIE swarm, and he made the choice to shoot them instead of not.
Yeah, that just goes to show the importance of knowing the list that you're fighting and making sure that your decisions are fueled correctly.
Correct.
Well, it was Jack. Jack has said several times he does play for fun. He'll be like, this sounds fun,
Oh, Jack, right?
Yeah,
he painted. He painted. This was an entirely painted squadron. It was, if you've ever seen the meme,
Me and the Boys.
Me and the Boys, with
From the
those
Spider-Man.
villains. He painted each of those ties as a different boy.
And Rack as Dr. Doom.
Oh, man, I really wanted to take a picture. I think I will sometime.
He won Best Painted at the tournament, being one of 2 people to show up with painted ships. I think James was painted as well. He had like a black and gold scheme. Really, really pretty.
That is something that I would like.
Yeah, he was the Turfiner flyer. He also had Countdown, who is, I think, fighting with Duchess for most popular striker right now. because Duchess's mobility or being able to just be like aileroning
Yeah.
really rivals that whole I'm going to take 1 damage from your protons ever since the proton nerf.
Which is funny because I think that Pierce Sabak would be one of the more popular ones, but hey,
Fun fact: Pierce a Bach with snapshot, you roll an additional dice.
It's not adding a dice is not modifying.
Dude,
So
that
if you
sounds super fun.
I may or may not have a list on its way next week. I didn't remember to grab it today.
Wow, that sounds so cool.
Yep.
All right. I think we can go ahead and
Go on to our next tournament, which an extended tournament at BZU the very next day.
Right, this was a 2-day event, and so the first one was hyperspace, the second day was extended. A lot less people showed up for this, 5 people. The majority came for the bigger day, which was Saturday. And the one that won this, which I think is a pretty interesting list, featured Veni as the major Veni, major point fortress with Taliesin and Greer backing it up.
And he executed it nearly flawlessly.
Yeah, Veni specifically had trajectory simulator, veteran turret gunner, seismic proton bombs, Ray, C3PO, and pattern analyzer.
Yeah, that's you're filling out as much as you can right there. I feel like, and Veni makes really good use of all of those things.
Yeah, I fought against that list, and it was so hard to get any damage through. It didn't help that I was using a swarm list, and so it was a lot of smaller die attacks.
Yep.
But gosh, it was difficult.
And Vinny pretty much almost always guarantees that he only takes maybe one damage per attack if you're rolling 3 dice.
Yep.
Correct.
I think the only thing that really puts damage, I was able to put damage through courtesy of old Tarok just stripping off all those tokens, but
there it is.
That was about it. Everything else, my Ketsu couldn't, because I was running my Ketsu list. And just Ketsu couldn't put through damage, and Talonbane was putting 2 to 3 through. But
all those calculates together.
Calculate, focus, it was...
Calculate, focus, Ray.
And if you're focusing the Veni, you got 2 RZ2s running with crack shot advanced optics running around at you.
Basically guaranteed 2 hits every time they swing.
Yep, especially because of Heroic, the 1-point wonder for the resistance.
Yep.
And so, yeah. That's super consistent. That's just resistance A-Wings in general.
Yep.
You slap Heroic on them in advanced optics, and all of a sudden, it's
good.
You better defend.
It's pretty much the same thing with the Omega Squadron list.
Except you throw Fanatical, and you let their shield go down.
Yep.
Very nice.
When you have 6 health, might as well.
And you were actually in this tournament because you can make the hyperspace one, and this is kind of a prototype of what you were running for a while before you completely switched over. Now the Nantex is out.
Right. And so this was a CIS list that featured the Feathen Outraw pilot with TA 175 as well as title, and 3 vultures with energy shell charges and
struts as standard.
And then 2 Bactoid prototypes, one with passive sensors and diamond boron missiles, and the other with concussion missiles. And essentially the strategy of this list was just park everything on a rock and make the opponent come to me. But that didn't work too well against Benny, especially with seismic charges getting thrown at me.
gotta adjust.
I do have to say it's pretty interesting that you're pretty much the only player up here that's dedicated to CIS.
It is a little strange. I know that their representation is really low, even at a national level, but I figured there'd be more.
I think they're starting to succeed pretty well in bigger tournaments.
But it's just not a lot showing up. But the ones that do show up are doing really well.
Seer Swarm's doing really well.
But I think what it is because I think the player who would most likely be to join you would be Brian, but they die too fast for him.
Yep.
They go pop.
He's scum for life.
Yeah, he's scum for life.
And I will say that one of the other interesting lists on here was the one that took third place, specifically for the Ketsu that was on there. Now, I think that Ketsu is a real pain to fly against, and this one was the one that featured 4-WOM, Static Discharge Range, and Shadowcaster, which I believe was advertised on another podcast at one point, right?
Yep, they are a very bold podcast. I did add a little tweak to it because originally, with the Ketsu, Talonbane, and Old Tarok run, but on the original list they were running nothing on them. I kind of wanted to add some more survivability and decided the bid didn't matter as much since they're all 5s and threw elusive on both of them.
I do really like elusive as an upgrade. I'll pretty much throw it on everything if I have the points for it.
So obviously, basic concept of this list is Ketsu gets in close, locks you down with the tractor
and
shoots you, makes so you can't use anything to defend yourself, or 1 token to defend yourself, gives you the ion, and just keeps chasing you down. While Old Tarok and Talonbane are also kind of running down your throat.
It's one of those lists that definitely doesn't feel really good.
I don't know.
It's against you.
I must say, it feels great to fly.
I do remember a particular Remy saying that it was Nightmare.
Oh, yep. Have fun, Poe. You're not getting away.
Okay. And so for one last local tournament that we'll go over for today, this is the most recent one that we held. It was another store-based tournament, and this one was extended.
About 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, it was about 2 weeks ago. Almost all of the tournaments that we went over today locally were hyperspace, besides the second day, Battlezone Urza. And this one had 6 players, which is pretty standard for a local store-based tournament.
Yep. First place is that CIS list we were actually just talking about.
The exact one.
The exact one. It did not have to worry about Venny this go around.
Yeah.
But so it did pretty well. I actually think you beat the Double Jedi, didn't you?
I did. It
was close, right?
No.
No?
No, it wasn't really close. And I think part of that is because the way that the CI list that I run works is everything's parked on a rock, and so it's really difficult to dodge that many arcs that are trained on your ships. And so the double Jedi lists, even though they had Anakin with supernatural reflexes and Obi-Wan with precognitive reflexes, they just couldn't maneuver around everything.
Yep.
That's what they depend on, especially when they only have those 2, evasion dice. Like, they're going to eat a lot of damage, especially because all of the ships on that CI list either have energy shell charges or concussion missiles or diamond-borne missiles.
Yep.
It was unfortunate by the Republic player because they forgot to bring their gas clouds and
had to run.
Didn't think about rock placement, so
He handed you the rocks, didn't he, when he placed them?
He did. Yeah. That is one of the other things about the grappling strut list that I have here is it really depends on those rocks. If the opponent has clouds that they're bringing, then they can, put the rock in on their side of the board and then put the clouds on my side, and it's like, well, I guess I gotta play regular X-Wing now.
And we faced each other. That's what I tried to do to you, and it worked decently. Was really close until the end. Where I
pretty much had that one.
Yeah. I definitely messed up there with some maneuvering at the end by Talonbane and Old Tarok. I should have backed out.
It was a super heated match, and it pretty much came down to dice.
Yep.
It was just dice shenanigans at the end there. I had like one last hyena on the rock, and it had 1 health. Should have died like 3 times, but I just kept rolling those naturals.
And that Thief and Autopilot was able to get around and do what it needed to do as well there at the end, too.
Yep.
When a Bulbasaur with those abilities is pretty hard to actually kill.
That's true.
Yep.
Even if it is a PS1, they have, Impervium Plating, Solus 1, and they're just not the target when you've got all these, 3 health, energy shell, charge vultures, and...
Well, vultures weren't an issue. I mean, they go pop.
Exactly. So they're the ones that they're focused first, because they're glass cannons. they can throw out 3 attack dice, but you can kill them in one hit, so they are the ones who get the most focus.
Oh man, 19
Definitely.
points is a pretty good value. 22 once you put in the charges, right? Because the charges are 3.
That is definitely true. Okay.
We had a couple of other interesting lists there. Near the bottom, unfortunately for them, just some really unfortunate games going on. A triple Kirax fighter list, which is he's been trying to make this work for a while, but it just hasn't really panned out.
And I think that's mostly, if this was first edition, I feel like it would work. Because in first edition, 3 ship lists were kind of the standard. 3 ships, 3 attack dice. That was pretty good value for what you got.
Yep.
Nowadays, if you don't have 4 ships with 3 attack dice, especially something that is as unfortunately not super maneuverable as the Kirax, you're just going to lag behind.
You need either that or something to reduce your opponent's maneuverability.
Exactly. And one of the things that make this one interesting is that Talonbane and Graz had outmaneuver, as well as shield upgrade and stealth device, and contraband cybernetics. And Victor had contraband cybernetics, shield upgrade, and stealth device.
As well as elusive.
And so you could see that there was a lot of
Potential
there was,
to evade
yes,
and live.
They tried really hard to make these guys survive as much as possible, but those are all really expensive upgrades. A 4th ship could have been added to this list, and
It might have made some of those games go his way.
I think so as well.
I mean, just the shield upgrade and stealth device, if we moved that off of every single one, then we probably fit something. Tugboats.
Yeah, and a mining guild tie,
Yeah. Something.
Jakku Gunrunner is pretty darn good in a list with other ships throwing 3 dice.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So I think it's about time that we move on from some of our local lists and talk about, some of what has been doing really well or represented in the national level.
And international even.
Yeah, international too, I suppose I should say.
Because you can really kind of see the difference between what us Alaskans fly and what the rest of the world has decided this is what you need to run.
And so I've got some of the largest and most recent tournaments up here. The first one that we're going to go over is a hyperspace trial that happened in Maryland, the Third Eye Games hyperspace trial. This one had 42 players, so you can see a lot more than something that we would ever have up here. And the one that took first place was
Rebels. You got 2 B-Wings with, your standard Braylon and Tem running crack shot. Wedge with just S-foils, actually. And Dutch running dorsal turret.
And Dutch is the Y-Wing, correct?
He's the
This is
Y-Wing.
the more popular Y-Wing. Yeah. So, this is your pretty standard. This is essentially Rebel Beef without...
Rebel Beef 2.0.
Yeah.
Rebel Ham, if you will.
It's too expensive for the U-Wing now, so now you just put Dutch instead.
And Dutch is good.
Yeah, Dutch was good.
He's a good support ship. He doesn't really do much as far as actual presence on the field goes, since he's just throwing 2 dice attacks. Yeah, he also doesn't have VTG, so he's not shooting you twice. But you really just want him for his ability, so it works out.
Right. And I think it's really interesting. This showcases something that I really enjoy in 2nd edition, and that's faction identity. Ever since the infamous Rebel Beef list came out with Leia Crew, we've seen just a propensity for this faction to use those 4 bulkier ships that have good offense and good defense, but not as much maneuverability. And that just sort of seems like the standard for this faction. They don't have a bunch of really high PSs that are able to just wiggle around the battlefield and be super dodgy. They're all about hitting you face on and just taking you down in the old-fashioned way.
Very straightforward with what they want to do. It's a lot of jousting.
So even at PS6, Wedge isn't going to do anything tricky to you.
Nope, you're going to get a talent roll.
Yep.
And another thing that the Rebellion doesn't do, they don't really swarm.
No, not so much.
Yeah, you can try Ring Swarm if you want, but
Like they have a Z95.
I don't know that you'd run it.
Kraken's pretty much the only one he'd probably run because he has the supportive ability of when he shoots an allied range 0 to 1 gets to do an ability or do an action, but even then, he's probably too expensive for his worth, and you're better off just finding the point space to fit Dutch.
They are definitely the squadron faction, for your kind of a standard squadron of ships, I feel.
Yeah, the elite,
Personally.
like elite squadron, like you see on like in the movies.
Yeah, you're not going to see 6, 5, 5, 5, but you're going to see a decent amount of dice coming at you and a lot of health to get through.
And it's just an interesting amount of ship variety.
Yeah, actually.
And so, another list that we see on here that did fairly well was Scorch and Kylo. And so this is a first order list. It had 2 Zeta Squadron survivors and an Epsilon Squadron cadet. And so I feel like this list is something that you would see in Empire. It's almost like the first order is emulating the Vader plus TIE escort. And it seemed to do really well in this tournament.
Well, in the, lore-wise movies and everything, the First Order is basically trying to become the Empire, so it kind of makes sense that we're following that here in the tabletop game as well.
Right.
I feel like Kylo executes being Vader almost better than Vader does because of the boost action and his shift ability. Throwing that extra dice is nice as Vader and getting that crit, but having natively 3 dice on a silencer with that maneuverability and 1 more hull is, I think, a huge difference.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I think the only thing holding Kylo back is his, well, at least in my opinion, subpar pilot ability, and most notably being a PS5 instead of PS6.
Well, I think if they had put Kylo at a PS6, that's too much.
It would have been too much.
Yeah, when you run Kylo, you're not, he's a lot more than Blackout. But you're not running him for his ability. You're running him for the 2 force points.
Exactly. Yeah, and they nerfed his ability in this. Don't you have to spend a force now to use it?
Yep. But they also made it so that you don't have to take damage anymore. It's just when you defend as well.
Right.
So that was their version of balancing it. But I don't know that I want to spend the force on it unless I know I'm not taking any other shots and I feel safe that I'm going to dodge.
So it's better just use the force for modifying.
Sure. And I will say that in this tournament specifically, there's a lot of swarm lists.
Yep, you got a CIS swarm with Sun Fac. You got what is
Sinker Swarm?
the Singer Swarm? You got a bit of a Rebel Swarm here with 2 Blue Squadron escorts, 2 Blue Squadron pilots, and AP5.
Yeah, it's like approaching
swarm levels.
Right. It's about as close to swarm that Rebel is going to get.
Yeah, without sacrificing.
I find this is super interesting because I've been playing around with the idea of a bunch of with a PS1 Rebel list for a little bit, and it's surprising how many attack dice you can fit in Rebel if you just stick to PS1s. Like all of those ships there, other than AP5, are 3 attack dice. All of them have, other than AP5, obviously, 6 or more hull or 6 or more health.
Yeah. It's a lot to chew through.
And AP5 is an incredible enabler since he can even coordinate stressed ships.
As long as, single stress.
Correct. But unless you get panicked, you're not often going to be double stressed.
True that.
Yeah. I think it's really telling, speaking from a CIS faction standpoint, that 2 of the lists that came into top 8 are 1 plus Vulture Swarms.
Yep. You got Sunfac with the Vulture Swarm and then the Seer Swarm. Although he does have another Belbalab with him as well as 2 bombers. So a bit different from what we usually see with the Seer Swarm.
Yeah. That is true. I think that the 1 or 2 ships, like a lot of the time you'll see a Belabab on the side, along with whether it's a Nantex or a first Belabab, as well as those vultures. alongside them. And I think it just goes to show how far the two Sith infiltrator sort of archetype has fallen.
Yeah, fallen
ever
off
since the nerfs.
Yep.
Yeah. Whether like a long time ago, well, I guess before the nerfs, two Siths and General Grievous was the highest performing CIS list, and it was doing as well as just regular double Sith infiltrators. But now it's all about the Seer Swarm, and that's been doing pretty darn good.
It definitely does very well when it's flown.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't had the chance to fly against it yet, but I imagine it wouldn't be. I can't imagine it would be too overwhelmingly enjoyable.
Yeah, I don't think I'll ever fly it personally. I'm just not really too interested in that. Also, I don't own that many vultures.
That sounds like you need to buy 5 more vultures.
No, I think I'm good. Next, we'll go over one of the largest tournaments that happened recently, which was the Grand Championship of Belgium. This one had 87 people, pretty considerable. Had a top 16 cut, which usually you only see top 8. And for first place, we saw a list that I think probably took people by surprise. At least it took me by surprise due to how low the representation for Scum is right now, as well as how low their performance is.
Yeah, definitely as a faction, other than I think this list, Scum generally are struggling to find their footing in tournament environments.
It's funny because as a faction, I think they do have the most ships available to them, but they have like the least number of viable ships. Like you'll see like a speckling here and there that perform well, but usually it's dominated by a select few. You know, you got Fen Rao, you've got Guri, you've got the Cartel Marauder, which is featured in this list right here. Triple Cartel Marauder, Quartel Mux of Crew, or Moldy Crow, sorry, and then Captain Seavor of Crackshot.
And it's a pretty right in your face list. You fly the Hawk into someone, you make their pilot skill 0, you pilot skill kill them.
Mm-hmm. Which is more of a defensive strategy than an offensive one, I feel like. You know, bringing them down to where they're not going to be dealing any damage to you, and you're just flat out taking them off the board with all of the dice that you're throwing at them.
Well, I almost feel like this list kind of subscribes to my philosophy of defense, where the best defense is to kill the enemy first.
Which seems like a very Scum thing to do.
It's what Torkel Mux does beautifully with bringing somebody down. You know, you're going against Vader? No, that's nice.
Mm-hmm.
It's also very scummy to have an ability that brings your opponent's pilot skill to 0.
Yeah.
Bring him down.
Say that although Scum isn't performing too amazingly right now, that I think the flavor is really nice. And that's something that I can always appreciate, especially as someone who dabbles a lot in the Scum.
I definitely feel like I've recently been kind of biased. Been dipping into Scum, trying to see what they're about. And even if they're not performing well, I do like the amount of tricks that they get and all the utility that they have amongst their ships.
Mm-hmm.
Like most everyone else, they don't really have that level of messing with the enemy, right? That the Scum do.
Exactly. And I hope that's something that they keep with their identity and really run with it for any future content that they release for that faction. Second place, I think that we got another Seer Swarm.
Seer Swarm, really, really popular right now.
Mm-hmm. This one specifically does only have one Bella Bab. There is a bomber in there, but the rest are vultures with energy shell charges. Wow, that's a lot of dice being thrown at you.
Something I don't think I've actually ever seen this being run is that bomber having the probe droids.
That sounds nasty. I will say right now.
I think I've only seen them run once, and it was by myself up here. I wasn't super impressed, but it's because I was running them with Maul. But I think with this Seer Swarm, you don't want to be near it.
I mean, just think about it.
It's more coverage,
Right.
in a way.
You go slow at first, let that probe go out front, get a bunch of locks on. First engagement, you've got energy shell charges and lock.
On top, you got your calculates, you got your lock, and you're not having to spend too much on it.
No.
After sending that droid out.
And that's to me, that's the biggest value of it, is getting the locks early.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, the opponent probably immediately guns it down the turn after, but after it moves in systems phase, so your ships all go first, it moves to the enemy, you get your locks and whatever, they destroy the droid, I assume.
Well, if I remember correctly, I don't think you can shoot it. I think you have to collide with it in order to...
I do believe that you can shoot.
You can shoot it?
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm thinking buzz droids where
I
they
think it has-
fly
Yeah,
over
you
it.
you can't shoot bus droids.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's 3 evade, 1 health, and then if you fly over it and you roll focus, you kill it.
Yeah.
Which is really unique. Most things deal with those hits and crits.
Yeah. I will say, I really do hope that they add more of those, board-based effects, like the buzz droids, the probe droids. I think that's really interesting design space, and they should really run with that, especially with CIS.
They've kind of started dipping a bit more into it with the adding delayed fuses and everything, kind of trying to flavor up bombs a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Even though almost no one would run delayed fuses unless they were doing something like bombardment drone with like proxy mines or something.
Because then you just be better off just playing Scum and running NIM instead of using delayed fuses.
Yeah, I suppose, but delayed fuse, isn't it free? That's 0 points.
Pretty sure it's either...
It's either 0 or 1.
Either way, that's really good value. Even at 1 point, that's good value.
Mm-hmm. Just having the option sometimes, depending on the show. Something that we should probably talk about, Inquisitors have been, pretty popular as of recently, right?
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, specifically running with that Colonel Jendon and having those missiles available to them.
Yeah, it didn't do particularly great in this tournament. It did make top 16, which I think, deserves some, reward there. And they all have supernatural reflexes in this particular list, as well as fire control system and concussion missiles.
Yep. Something that, this list, it made top 16, placed 12th, and then 16th. So probably just a bad matchup for it once it got into that top cut. Mm-hmm. It's actually pretty standard, I think, apart from the supernatural. I do believe heightened perception is pretty common on them as well, so they can try to initiative kill, so they're not taking shots back.
Right.
And then obviously Jendon, we all know what he does. Get those locks early, get them often.
Yeah, I will say that it is really interesting seeing that ship make a sort of comeback, because it's been sort of laying low for a little while, I feel like.
The Inquisitor ship or the Lambda?
Well, kind of both, but absolutely yes to the Inquisitor.
Yeah, it's just its chassis it's not great. I mean, like, the price adjustment doesn't make it all of a sudden it's a good chassis, but its points are definitely making it a bit more worth it to run now, making it affordable to run.
Yeah, and people are getting fairly all right success with it.
I have seen one other variation of this list where one of those Inquisitors is replaced by the Grand Inquisitor, which is a nice little spin on it.
Right. Another pretty popular list that has been seeing a lot of play for a while, or at least variations of it, which also made top 16, is Darth Vader, Soontir, and Bombers.
Those are pretty good ships right there. The Bombers have a good set of health. Barrage rockets means that they can engage you at range 2 to 3 pretty safely, and roll 3 dice no matter how they shoot you. And Vader and Soontir are just really good ships.
Yeah, both of those together seem to just, dominate, in representation. Like, so many people fly them due to how good they are.
Yeah, Darth Soontir plus whatever you feel like running that day is just a pretty solid list.
Yeah.
Even after the most recent points update, that didn't stop anyone from running that list archetype at all.
And I think it just took some of the upgrades off some of those ships, and they're like, it's still great.
It's still Vader in Soon Tier. The only weird thing about this one is that it doesn't have Afterburners on Vader, which is usually a stapled upgrade to him.
That is very true. You know, the boost is invaluable for someone with that many options available. And I do believe that variations of this list were some of the highest win rate before the points update. And it didn't change that much after.
The only difference is that Darth probably lost an upgrade or two.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and at the end of the day, that doesn't hurt you too bad because you're flying Darth Vader.
All right. I think we can go ahead and go to the next tournament here. This is another hyperspace trial that took place in Niedersachsen called Hype the Space. I think it's pretty funny. I like it.
It's nice. It's great.
First place that took this tournament is something that I knew, well, not going to toot my horn too much, I knew was something that was really good for a while. 4 U-Wings. Super efficient in just the stats that are on a table. You don't have to look at anything else besides 3, 2, 8.
6, 4. Or no, it's 5, 3.
Yeah, 3, 2, and then health.
Insert health number here.
8 health.
Yeah.
8 health to chew through. And with 2 evasion, it's got some survivability to do it.
Yeah, of course they're not gonna be doing anything fancy on the mat, but
no, they're gonna rotate on you.
They can do that at the cost of their evasion, but you know that's just it's efficiency at its finest, and it's very rebel, which is also something that I like.
Beefy.
Mm-hmm. This particular list, which took first, had Heftober with Selfless, Tactical Scrambler, and Pivot Wing. Benthic 2 Tubes with Perceptive Co-Pilot, Chopper, and Pivot Wing. And then 2 Blue Squadron Scouts, 1 with Leia and Pivot Wing, and the other with Tactical Scrambler and Pivot Wing.
Here's one thing I want to point out about this list that I really like. I love that this player here used Chopper in this list.
Yeah.
If you're not familiar with Chopper, what Chopper allows you to do is during your perform action step, you may perform 1 action and take 1 damage. That allows you to perform an action even after you pivot.
Wow! So you don't have to use or if you've already used the Leia.
Well, this doesn't have Leia.
Yes,
It does have
does?
Leia. They are
never mind.
right there on the Blue Squadron Scout.
So yeah.
So this is the classical Rebel Beast style.
Correct.
And just thinking about having 4 U-Wings pivot themselves as a white, I wouldn't. This is not a list that I would like to fly against. Let's just say that.
And even not as a white benthic, I really love that Chopper. I think it's crazy good on specifically benthic.
Mm-hmm. And you can sort of see the formation that's planned with this list, which I think is pretty interesting because you've got 2 tactical scramblers. Not something that you see too often. I think, of course, those would be the ones that are in the front. You can just tell just from looking at the list itself.
And Hef loves to bump, so he's going to fly into you. He's going to have you. He's going to try his best to force you to bump, and then shoot through him because it's a medium-based ship, so it's pretty easy to get your closest target to be between him and that person. And Hef's ability is just great in that context.
I fought against Hef before. Gosh, it's so strong. Surprised he's not running Intimidate. He's going with Selfless.
Yeah, which is a bit odd. I was going to point that out. I guess maybe to give Benthic some more survivability. You know, he wants to, take the hits for him. But I think Intimidation, then again, best defense is killing them first. I'd want to strip them of that evasion dice so that they die. They die. They're less likely to not take damage from Benthic's, slapping them around.
Right.
I think it's a pretty solid choice just because Hef is probably not looking to get shot too often, so having the ability to absorb shots from everyone else, it just deepens the health pool.
And then,
exactly.
And even if they want it, it'll be like, oh, well, I need to get rid of Hef. Well, now they're shooting Hef instead of the other guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The ability to distribute damage throughout, the list that you have is something that can be invaluable in something with this kind of health pool.
Yeah.
You want to be able to maintain 4 arcs as long as possible.
Yep.
As well as stop the opponent from, taking out a ship and getting the rest of the points on that ship.
Yep. Especially if you can get somebody locked in a kill box with all 4 of those guys, or even just 3 of them.
Yeah,
While the other guy's covering the possible exit they might have had.
for sure.
And this list is really good at setting that up with the pivot.
Mm-hmm. So second place in this tournament is also something that has been seeing a lot of play. One of the most popular lists out there. Again, 2 Jedis and Rick Ollie.
Unfortunately. My feelings on that.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely a pretty frustrating list to go against just due to the maneuverability of these ships.
Yep.
Rick Ollie is like a discount defender almost.
Yep.
I think that's almost exactly how you can describe the Naboo's as a whole.
Yep. Exact same ability.
Exact same ability, same power if you stable juke to him.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. He's really cost effective too.
That's true. And with a pilot ability, that's just...
It's great for going fast.
Which is what the ship wants to do anyways. Mm-hmm. And then Anakin and Obi-Wan are their standard squirrely little selves. Right. Especially Anakin. With that strip stress that we went over earlier.
And regen across the board.
Yep. R2 astromech on every single ship here.
I have seen a handful of games now where just because of regen, a person's taken 0 points from this list.
I'm getting visions from first edition right now. At least it's not Poe. I will say that. Also interesting to note that Obi-Wan does still have calibrated laser targeting with Anakin with Delta 7B. That's pretty standard when running both of these fairly high costed pilots in a list like this.
Here, third place, a variation on the Inquisitor. In fact, placed third. It's Rack with Vader Dauntless and 3 Naked Inquisitors. Actually, another 2 lists running this exact same list, placing 3rd and 7th.
Yeah, they both got into top 8.
Yeah, which should show you really how good Inquisitors are doing, because they swapped out the support ship and still placing really well.
They're just so cost efficient.
Yeah,
because you have that force, you just take the evade.
They have the linked action, which you can boost or barrel into focus, which
it's invaluable for pretty much any ship that wants to be maneuverable.
Since kind of across the board, PS4's and X-Wing kind of got hit collectively. Having all of them be a PS3, which is kind of the new best not the best pilots go to be at, that isn't 5 or 6, means that they're
hovering where they need to be to be dominant.
Yeah, and I do want to say that the Decimator especially has been making a bit of a comeback, which I kind of like to see. A lot of people, especially in first edition, really counted it out, and early second edition, but now it's like it's got a breath of life coming to it.
Yeah. I am a pretty big Decimator fan. Can't wait for my list to become hyperspace legal.
Defender hyperspace legal when FFG.
No, I'm talking alpha classes.
No.
With a really, really fat Oikun.
I changed my mind.
I feel like Rack is... I don't know, I just think he's overvalued. And I think that Oikun could see more play. And people would kind of catch on and be like, this guy's actually really good. Personal opinion. It's
possible, but I do think Rack is pretty nice, since you're going to be pretty much reinforcing every turn with the...
Decimator, yep.
Because you're not evading anything.
Yeah. So... I will say that I do want to point out that 5 of these 8 lists are Empire, which just goes to show how popular that faction is right now as a whole.
And I don't think it's not just popularity. It's also how good they are right now.
Right. I mean, they didn't get first place in this particular tournament.
But 5 out of 8 are up there. That's really consistent doing well.
Yeah. A lot of the time, your performance is about making cut, because you'll have bad matchups that will affect your final ranking. You'll have bad dice that'll affect your final ranking.
Variances.
There's a whole bunch of variants to whether or not you're going to win, but Empire is so consistently doing so well that it's hard to ignore that they're one of the dominant forces right now.
I think it's specifically the Vader Soon tiers and Triple Inquisitors.
Mm-hmm.
They are what is kind of deciding what the Empire is doing.
For sure.
Because you're not really seeing much else. I think we got one other list, but it's still Vader Soon tier, but it's just Duchess,
Right.
Although if we go up real quick right here, he scored first in the Swiss, but when it came to top cut, 5th overall. We got a pretty fat rack with an Inquisitor and Soon tier, which is kind of a deviation. It's trying to combine almost the two lists.
Yeah, I do think that's pretty interesting. You got that high PS, knife fighter along with the bulk that rack brings, and then Inquisitor
to harass on the edges,
which is almost like a support because this Inquisitor specifically has sense.
Mm-hmm.
Which sense is pretty invaluable against aces.
Right.
Especially if you're giving up that bid. Now your Soon tier knows if he needs to boost or barrel roll to kind of try to make their decisions harder.
And it makes it a lot easier for ships like Rack to get in blocking distance of other ships too.
Absolutely. Well, although after you've
already set the dial, I think it's more of
Rack's going to be maneuvering very much after that.
It's more of the which side should I be reinforcing.
This isn't 1.0 anymore. You can't put an engine upgrade on Rack.
We haven't talked about this particular tournament for a little bit, but I just want to point out one of the lists in this top 8 actually is Scum, and a very interesting Scum list at that. Double fire sprays with Boba and Kashka Frost.
Fire spray holds special place in my heart for that design.
And Boba has Maul Crew, Prox Mines, and Dead Man Switch with a crack shot.
With a crack shot.
And then Kashka's got Crack Shot, 000, Prox Mines, Marauder, and Dangar. Like, honestly, every single part of this list is something that I wouldn't expect to see.
This list is out of left field.
Yeah. The fact that it made top 8 is something that I'm happy about.
And I'm just wondering, like, is it excellent flying by the player, or is this just a list that nobody knows is really good yet? And it's going to come out of nowhere and whack everyone because it's a 2-ship list, which right now are kind of out of favor unless they're Jedi, because the Jedi are super maneuverable.
Yeah. With 2-ship lists, there's no room for error.
Yep.
And something that's not quite as maneuverable as the fire spray. I feel like I can only imagine that the person who flew this had to do so really well.
And I feel like the prox mines, though, do kind of help cover up any potential screw-ups they might have. Being able to, somebody's behind me, I got to drop a prox mine. They either have to get off my tail or eat a prox mine. Then I'll shoot them, too.
Yeah.
I actually love Maul in the case of this list. One force point is for 12 points is pretty solid value. It allows you to be a little bit more dodgy with how you use your actions and still be able to modify your dice.
That's true, both offensively and defensively, especially when you're doing those red maneuvers.
Even if the second part of Maul's ability isn't that helpful, but
well, you get what you can get. All right.
I think we're ready to head on to the next one.
Next one here is one that is locally national. OCC hyperspace trial that took place in Washington at Olympic Card and Comics. This was a 58-man tournament, which is really large for something
to us.
Yeah, shout outs to our spiritual neighbors there down in Washington. The first place list in this particular tournament was once again Double Jedi Rick Ollie.
And we are just kind of guessing here at the top cut. List Fortress being a little bit wonky with it, showing top cut 2 second places. But the thing to note about this list is no Anakin.
Right? It's not Anakin. I will say that Plo Koon is something that is seen in this particular list. Yep. It is one of the variants. It's one of the more popular variants. And what this allows you to do is run both of them as Delta 7B.
Mm-hmm. Plo Koon, and when I was younger, kind of my favorite Jedi Master there for a while, so I've kind of been looking to see if he's going to get play. It's good to see him on a list and doing well.
I know. I think, at least locally speaking, Mace was seen a lot as a pilot for one of the Jedi fighters, but has really dropped off recently. That's true for local, and I think that's true for all around the world, too. You don't really see Mace anymore. But Plo, you do see.
And there are 2 copies of this list, so it's obviously something that is doing decently with the OE Plo Koon.
I think the interesting thing about Plo Koon isn't his ability, because I think his ability is kind of not super great. But maybe every once in a while you'll get to use his ability to swap a green token to somebody, but it's mostly just that he's a PS5 Delta B.
Exactly. Sometimes that's all you need.
Yep.
Just like with Kylo, PS5, good stuff around.
With Force.
Ability might as well be blank. Though it is useful sometimes. Second place here was another variation on Seer Swarm. This one featuring the Nantex, particularly Chertek. Yeah. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. No idea. I don't know if anyone knows. Someone probably knows.
Yeah, probably close enough.
I've heard it said several ways. I think Chertek is the accepted by everybody, but running the Ensnare as is tradition, and Crackshot actually, which I didn't expect on a I4.
I mean, it already has a bullseye arc. I feel like having a bullseye type upgrade is not something that's too out of the ordinary.
I do like Chertek because he kind of... his ability is just re-rolling dice, but it feels like he's a lot... He's obviously a lot cheaper than Sunfac.
He's essentially the discount Sunfac.
Yeah, it's more or less what I was aiming towards. He's basically just discount Sunfac.
The fact that he's so much cheaper, mostly because Ensnare goes down by a massive 14 points from PS6 to PS4. You can still get that really dangerous range 1 area in front of him, catch lower PS ships unaware, and as well as have really good offense when you push away that tractor token. The fact that they don't have the ability to target lock makes it so that rerolls are much more valuable on this particular ship.
Well, and it also, not only does it affect those lower pod skills, catching them off guard, it also forces higher initiatives to kind of be a bit more cagey around you.
Exactly.
And they have to rethink their strategy. I'm just going to go on an initiative, kill this guy, because he will move you back into his arc and blast you.
And being shot at range 2 is a lot better than being shot at range 1, obviously.
With the tractor token.
Yeah.
Correct.
And then Captain Seer here not having impervium plating, which I think is a bit different, as well as running K2B4 for the relay. What does K2B4 do again?
Let me find out. I'm finding out right now.
Yeah, I'm not too sure off the top of my head. I've been using a lot of Kraken and the newest one, which calculates to everyone when something is destroyed.
K2B4. While a friendly ship at range 0 to 3 defense, it may spend 1 calculate token. If it does, add 1 evade result. As the attacker chooses to gain 1 strain token.
Right. It's that one. This one's a pretty popular relay for swarms, just for the amount of survivability that it gives to vultures.
Well, and if you combine that with the fact that you can tractor somebody, tractor and strain, you're really having to be pick and choose with, do I want them to evade it or not?
That's true.
I've definitely noticed that it's the meta or like players have shifted using KTB4 or TA175 over using Kraken now.
That's true. Kraken is just really expensive. You still see it. It's still good in my opinion, but the other upgrades are cheaper and they align more with the way that the faction is moving right now, which is a couple of ships and then a ton of vultures.
Yeah,
or,
and
or
all the,
hyenas if you can fit them.
and those two relays are efficient no matter how many vultures you have, whereas Kraken's only 3, and it's 10 points to just keep one calculate token.
Right. It's good, but just not on the list that are currently seeing the most play.
Correct. If we get to a point with like droids where there's like 3 or 4 point droids.
Yeah. So yeah.
Another interesting CIS list in top 8. Just three CIS ships: Grievous, Sunfac, and SureTech.
Yeah, that is a really funny one right there.
Probably has a pretty significant bid, I would assume.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely seems like it, with just Sunfac and Snare Crack, SureTech and Snare Crack, and then Grievous with Imperium Solar Sword.
I actually bet Sunfac works crazy good with Grievous since he has the ability to move ships for him.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Grievous definitely he has a little bit of trouble getting in that sweet spot of out of the opponent's arc due to his unfortunately really low
Very
pilot
mediocre
score.
4.
Like he has the maneuverability options, but he's just not at a pilot score that supports his play style.
So Sunfac moving in could actually makes it pretty easy to get that for him.
Yeah, and then SureTech, even if you don't get the ensnare through him, you've got a PS6 Sunfac that can move that tractor token and activate SureTech's ability, which is also pretty huge. So yeah, if I manage to get myself another Nantex, I might try a variation of this list out for myself.
I hadn't thought about that in action before. It's pretty spooky.
Yep, and it did make top 8, although it didn't place super high in top 8, unfortunately, but still pretty fun. All right. Next tournament that we have here is a really recent one, the Grand Championship in France.
Extended.
Yes, this is specifically extended format. 71 people in this particular tournament, and first place going to another Captain Sear with Ultra Swarm.
I think interesting note, Kraken on this list, and triple Discord missiles, which is the first we've really seen on these lists we've been going through.
Yeah, Discord missiles is something that I think is a pretty good ability, but something I haven't seen too much, especially in our local scene where like no one runs CIS. But I do think that it's still a really good upgrade.
I definitely think if I flew CIS, I'd probably play with Discord missiles a lot. I think they're crazy fun.
Yeah, they are for sure. And if your opponent doesn't have any maneuverability option, it can be super difficult to shake those things off.
Absolutely.
Another interesting list that took 7th place, Soontir and 2 Delta Squadron pilots.
Yeah, taking that second place with two defenders, or not defenders, sorry, with Soontir and 2 others.
It's
those are defenders.
Yes, those are the PS1 defenders.
Those have been seeing a lot of play recently, right?
Yep, the PS1 defenders and the and Rexar have been seeing a lot more play in extended formats. And it's no surprise as to why the defenders, an incredible score line, a great ability.
With a white 4K.
With a white 4K.
I mean, they certainly pay for it, but the fact that you can fit 2 defenders with Soontir is striking.
It doesn't matter the PS1s. The defenders can get themselves in whatever spot they want to be in at any point in time.
They are really, really well rounded out for their dial.
That's true. Yeah. Another good list that I see here, which took 4th place, or at least tied for 4th, is another scum list with Ketsu, 2 Black Sun Assassins with Crackshot, and L337, which we haven't been seeing too much of ever since the nerf to that particular build. This one's sort of avoiding that altogether by running it totally naked.
Yeah, just Fearless and Shadowcaster on Ketsu, kind of all she really needs to kind of.
Yeah, she doesn't really need too many upgrades on her.
She's really, I feel like, really, really effective for her points.
Yeah.
Especially
the amount of, I think it was like 5 points overall that she got reduced, the Ketsu Shadowcaster combo.
Yep.
She really benefited from that. I feel like she was a good ship before, but now she's honestly one of the best ships in the faction, in my opinion.
Yep. She's a very happy pancake right now.
Mm-hmm. And then the Black Sun Assassins, both with Crackshot, just really solid chassis for about 50 points.
Especially with that ship ability.
Mm-hmm. You know, you got those wiggly barrel rolls. You have 3 attack dice, 3 evasion dice. You know, it can be hard to pin those down, especially when you're worrying about something like Ketsu.
Mm-hmm. And with L3 enabling, you almost want to go after L3 as well to stop the enabulation. But then you got, the actual damaging ships doing what they want.
And another one that took fourth place, this is what you were talking about before with the variation to the Inquisitor and Colonel Jendin list with the Grand Inquisitor, along with those 2 Inquisitors.
Mm-hmm. Basically, they're swapping out their force abilities to have Grand Inquisitor here with sense, and losing that heightened perception or sense in some of their cases.
Right. In
order to have this Grand Inquisitor in his actually really good ability, being able to deny a range 1 bonus from an enemy ship, especially if you're going against someone like Fen Rao. Mm-hmm. There's a huge difference between 5 dice and 4 dice.
Yeah, I think it's not quite to the glory days of what it was in first edition, at least for that ability particularly, but still super invaluable. It's force, on the ship. It's PS5.
And I don't think you'll ever approach those levels of glory from 1.0, considering you have to spend the force to do it.
For sure.
But what's really important is being able to take those range 3 shots and apply the range 1 bonus.
That's big.
Sure, you don't deny them their range 3 bonus anymore, like you did in 1.0, but getting 3 dice at range 3 on a 2 dice ship is beautiful. Mm-hmm. And then Jendin, for the obvious reasons, get those locks on for those concussion missiles for after you've poured some damage on with just normal attacks, or if you need to throw 3 dice.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
I think the jamming beam's hilarious.
Well, the jamming beam's just there because it's free. I feel like,
I mean, that's why it's on any list. If you see it on 10 Gnome, it's not because 10 Gnome's going to use that jamming beam. It's on there because it's free. And maybe 1 out of 1,000 games, you'll find a situation where, like, this lower pilot skill guy that only has 3 tokens.
Let's get rid of him.
Get rid of him.
Of course, when I want to do that, I just fly Scum and put old Tarek on the field.
Oh, yeah. That's definitely a fun one.
Well, once again, a lot of CIS Swarm here. Seer Swarm, Dooku Grievous Swarm, and then just a Grievous Swarm.
Yeah, it's really quite funny, The representation for CIS is fairly low, but I guess in France, they're just like,
they're all over
about it. They're like, yeah, give me that Seer Swarm. And two of these lists, the Captain Seer Swarm, as well as the General Grievous Swarm, have 3 Discord missiles.
Yeah, Discord missiles showing up again.
Yeah, again and again.
Yep. So it's...
I think it's super interesting because Discord missiles are inherently just not that great against evasive ships.
Mm-hmm. Anything with a barrel roll, really.
Yeah. So it's super interesting to see that people are finding value. I mean, it is pretty cheap. I mean, it is only 1 critical damage if it's hit, but...
Well, it's also, for how cheap it is, it's an effective zoning tool. They don't want to have to worry about that. So
if you got 3 of those babies on the field, the options for your opponent on the approach
get limited. They narrow heavily. Especially for the fact that you can release them early and they'll stay on there, go towards the enemy, and you still got your calculates for when you actually engage. Yep.
All right.
Hashtag cash money.
And it looks like we still have a major vendor list that made it to top 8. We haven't seen Hatchet Man quite as much recently, I feel like.
You are correct. It definitely got hit in the updates.
Mm-hmm.
That and not a lot of people want to spend $80 on a model if they don't have it.
Yeah, secondary market. What a weird place.
Just have 3 models already.
All right.
But a pretty typical launching vendor as opposed to the cannons that you might see.
Right, we got fire control systems, proton torpedoes, advanced proton torpedoes, and of course,
Advanced slam with the loadout so that you can run those torpedoes. At any range, he's deadly.
exactly. And then we've got Darth Vader with the standard fire control systems and afterburners, and we've got Lieutenant Sai with Palpatine, which I think is pretty interesting.
I'm a big fan of Palpatine's ability. Giving anyone the ability to utilize the Force is pretty powerful, specifically on a ship that's going to have kind of a hard time staying in the fight once the fight actually breaks out.
For sure. It's not very maneuverable, so it might as well try and help out the other people that are pulling weight.
Yep, and being able to give that to Vendor, I think actually is really important because Vader's got 3 Force. He doesn't need 4,
right?
Or does
he's
he?
Probably fine. Well, it's like I'm going to do like 5 actions in 1 turn. Da, 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 da.
But Vendor getting that Force lets him. He can choose to, use his focus defensively and not have to spend it on that attack. And it's like, I'm going to use the Force over here.
Right.
It's not going to be, 1.0 Palpatine where you name it and then you get that crit. You can't get crits with this Palpatine. But having that Force basically floating is fantastic.
Yeah, for sure. All right. I think that we're pretty much done talking about the
recent tournaments.
We're starting to get pretty far in this recording. I think it's about time that we wrap things up for this particular podcast. We don't want to run it for too long. And so I hope you guys really enjoyed it. We're going to try and release this podcast the first Monday of each month. Next time we'll bring more tournament results for what's been going on up here. We'll talk more about some of the trends that are happening, and if we have time, we'll talk about some other fun stuff.
Some more controversial things like the Nantex that is the 1.0 Phantom of 2.0.
Yeah, I'm sure that'd be a great conversation.
Yeah, we really did want to talk about the Nantex,
but
we're wrapping this up for this time. Maybe next time.
Thank you for joining us.
Aurora Squadron out.